when you're living off of limited money and you don't have a lot of support from a husband, then you're stronger than you think you are. Welcome back to my channel, Single Mom on a Farm. If you're new here, then I suggest maybe you watch my story just to get to know me a little bit. Today I'm going to be talking about some pros and blessings of being poor or not having a lot of income, and of being single or just like raising a family while you have a husband that's very busy in medical school or maybe military or something like that. Just focusing on some of the good things about it, seeing the glass half full instead of half empty. Maybe just mention a few of the cons. I just jotted down a few notes on a piece of paper. I know someone had commented that they didn't like it that I didn't have my script prepared so well, but that's just how I roll. Even when I speak in church, I don't write down word for word what I'm going to say. I just kind of go off the top of my head. So I'm sorry if that bothers you. You don't have to watch this. So some blessings of being poor or on a limited income through medical school. Because we could have taken out loans like some of our friends and done a little better well off. They went to the zoos or museums, and Six Flags I think was there. So they were doing fun things, going to the movies and things like that, and we didn't. And I think looking back, I'm glad that we didn't take out student loans, because it would have been really hard to pay them back since we didn't get an awesome job for very long after medical school, like some of our friends are. I'm glad that we were living off of a limited income, because it taught us a lot. It taught me, for one thing, that I'm stronger than I am. So I think that's going to be a theme throughout this whole video, is that when you're living off of limited money and you don't have a lot of support from a husband, then you're stronger than you think you are. I'm glad that we didn't have a lot of money, or we're spending a lot of our time doing things to like please ourselves, like movies and entertainment type of things. It gave us a lot more free time to explore our own interests, to be more creative. I'm glad we didn't have a lot of toys, because my children were very creative with the things that they have. One of my favorite stories, or my favorite home video, is we very first got our first video camera, and we had planted flowers in our front yard. And Kylie and Madeline are playing. In one scene, they're playing swimming. So they're just swimming like this, just running around the yard, just swimming and swimming and swimming. So I think that's really cute that they're just playing, that they're in a pool. And then they're sitting on these two chairs and they're staring at the flowers, and they have this Walmart bag full of like the plastic cups that the flowers had come in, and the little signs and stuff like that in the bag. And so I'm videoing and I'm saying, like, aren't the flowers pretty? And she's just like, I just want to sit and stare at them all the time. She's like, but we got to get going. And she's like, grabs Madeline, and she says she has this bag of trash. And I'm like, Kylie, that's the trash. She's like, it's not trash, that's our stuff. And they had been playing with the bag of trash, like the little cups that the flowers had come in. And they played with that for like weeks. They put little rocks in it and pretended it was money. I can't remember what all that they did with it. You flip it upside down, it can be like a little keyboard. So they just played with it all the time. A lot of our home movies from when they were little is like that they're just playing with shoes on their hands and clapping as if they're like cymbals, and doing so much fun stuff. So they're very creative. They were never bored. They just came up with their own games and things. We had one big old computer desktop that had dial-up internet that usually didn't work very well. So I only used it about once a week or twice a week to check my email when they're napping, but we didn't watch movies on it or do anything like that. We didn't have a TV. So I'm glad that we only had one car, so that we were just home. They were able to just play outside a lot, play inside a lot, and just make up their own games with anything, any little trash and cardboard, and be creative and just have fun, just enjoy their childhood, and not seeing what's around them, like seeing what's on commercials, what they might want to buy, or seeing what's around them that other friends were doing or wearing or getting for their birthdays or things like that. So that's kind of one blessing of just not having a lot of money, just having the one car and a simple little house and not money to go places. They also learn to entertain themselves instead of feeling like they just have to show up and be entertained or told what to do or anything, that they had kind of in charge of their whole day. We learned to be uncomfortable. I think I mentioned this in the budget movie, that some people just aren't willing to be uncomfortable, like with heat or air conditioning. One of the first summers that we lived in Texas, so we had this little tiny 700 square foot house, and it didn't have air conditioning, but it had one window unit. And every morning, then we would wake up and we'd do our chores and eat breakfast and get ready for the day. And then around 9 o'clock, we would go walking with some friends. And I feel like those are the good old days when I just had like the day to play with my kids and not be working in so much house and childcare, because it's a very small house and so much yard work. I'm at house and yard work. I did have childcare, but I just had the two girls at the time, and I was pregnant with my third. So they were, 2 and 1. And we'd go walking at the park with our friends. From about 9 to 10, we'd walk, and then the kids would play on the playground with their friends, and us moms would just chat. And it was so much fun. And then we would come home, and we would very, very hot and sweaty. So this is in Dallas. We're very hot over the summer. So we do this every morning. Get my exercise, get my social time in. They got their play time in. They got some good exercise on the playground. Then we would come home and eat lunch, and I would take a cold shower, like the coldest it could be. That we just turned the cold water on only, not the hot water. Of course, we had city water, and the lines are just like maybe 6 inches under the ground. So the water was kind of warm during the summer. But anyway, you just turn the cold water on, take a cold shower, and then get off. I'd try to just stand in front of a box fan, just to keep myself cool. And then we'd all take naps around 1, because I was just a few months away from baby number 3. And that way we wouldn't have to use our air conditioning until we woke up from our naps around 3 o'clock. Then I would turn the air conditioning on and just use it for the rest of the evening. So that was a good way to save money on air conditioning. Try to keep yourself cool with the water and fan, and just not use it until the afternoon instead of using it all day long. Something else I appreciate about not having a lot of money or being careful with our money is that I learned to do a lot of things by myself. I remember the first time I got a flat tire. Then I had a whole bunch of kids, I think 9 kids in a 12-passenger van, and the tire blew out, and we were going over a big mountain pass, so about an hour away from any town. Of course, no cell service or anything. And somebody pulled over, and I was like, great, someone's going to help us. And he's like, oh, do you want me to go to the nearest town and find you a tow truck? And I was like, no, just help us find the spare tire, because I didn't know where it was. I knew where it was in the minivan, but not in this big rig. And he's like, oh, I had no idea how to change a tire, but I'll go call a tow truck for you. And I was like, I can't afford a tow truck, but we can change it ourselves. I knew we could. So he drove off, and we were finally able to look in the manual, figure out where the spare tire is. It was underneath the back of the car, I believe. And we had to, unscrew it and lower it down and jack up the car, put the big van, and put it on. And it all worked just fine. By the time the next person drove by and offered to help, we were just about done getting the tire on. And we felt so proud of ourselves. It just bolsters a sense of confidence that I can change a flat tire. I don't need to call for a tow truck. I don't need to call a husband or a friend or neighbor or anybody like that. We were far away from anybody anyway. And would you know, like 2 weeks later, we're on a freeway in a big city, and we saw a lady with a flat tire, and we drove past, and my kids are like, we all know how to change a flat tire, let's stop and help her. So we got off at the next exit and circled around, came back, got back on the freeway and stopped and helped her. And she was so, so grateful. She was like, I've been calling my boss and he's not answering. I'm calling my mom and my dad, they're not answering. I had no one else to call. I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, it's fine. You just find your flat tire, find your spare tire, and take off the flat one, stick it on, and away you go. And my kids learned how to stop and help people. They know what it's like to have skills that they can offer and something to offer the world and help people who are in a little bit of distress. Other blessings of having a husband in medical school where they're busy a lot is that you just find out that you are much stronger than you think you are. I remember the first time we had a tornado warning, and I was pretty scared about that. If you're familiar with Irving area, is where the tornado had hit, where the old Dallas Cowboy Stadium was, and we just lived the next exit down. And I just had the 2 little kids at the time, and I learned to go through a tornado warning and we were safe and everything, but I learned that I can rely on God to help me, and I knew that He would keep us safe and tell me what to do if there's a place I should go. We did hide in our little, kind of like a hallway, like we had the living room and then the 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And so I just like shut all the doors and tried to stay right there with the 2 little girls until we were safe, because the bathroom had windows in it. Likewise, we had our first hurricane after we moved to North Carolina. Once again, my husband was at the hospital. They had kept him there kind of under lockdown for 2 days so that all the doctors are at the hospital and not at home and not able to get to the hospital. So they kept them there. So I was like, great, I have to go through the hurricane by myself. I think I had 6 or 7 kids at the time. But we made it into a lot of fun. I was just like, well, we can either be scared and freaked out and worried that we don't have a husband and father here to help protect us, or we can just turn it into fun. You know, I feel like when you're scared, make it fun. I mean, just tell this other really quick story is one time we went to Disneyland when I was a kid. Though I only went to Disneyland one time when I was a kid. I was about 9 years old, and my whole family got on the Matterhorn, and my little brother was about 3 years old, and he started crying on it because it was a scary ride. And so my oldest brother was sitting by him. They were in the very front seat, and he's like, anytime you're scared, say hee 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 hee, instead of crying about it, because he was kind of didn't want our parents to know that he was so scared. And he talked him into going on this scary ride. And so the whole ride he's going hee 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 hee, and they were just laughing and kind of made it a lot more fun instead of being scared. So I kind of remember that when I have scary times, is like, just think hee 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 hee, you know, like, this is gonna be fun, we're gonna make it fun. So we did that with the hurricane. We went out and played in it a little bit. We had a hurricane party. I think our power went out a little bit. We sat on the floor with blankets and ate lunch and dinner there. We read books, mostly just watched it storm, had some fun foods and things like that. And we realized that we can go through a hurricane and we'll be fine. We didn't have too much damage. We lost some shingles. A lot of our neighbors did lose a lot of trees and other shingles and mailboxes, and we had a lot of flooding and everything, but we were safe, and I learned to trust God again, that we'll be safe, that if I was prompted to move somewhere else, like into a different location of the house or run to a neighbor house, I knew that God would tell me what to do and that He'd keep us safe and that we could get through any hard times together. I also learned that I can do vacations by myself. When we had 3 kids, it was the last time that I went on vacation with my husband. He was kind of difficult to do vacations with, and so I decided just to go by myself was easier, even though I had a lot of little kids. And so starting with 4 kids, I just started flying by myself to my parents' house, or doing car trips. I did a train ride when I had 5 little kids, and that was kind of scary. I was kind of afraid that it was an overnight trip, and I was afraid of if I fall asleep, if was a hobo gonna jump on the train, or were we safe on the train? I had heard bad stories about trains. This is an Amtrak, but it all worked out fine. But I was scared to go to sleep, and I didn't have a seat for the baby and the 2-year-old. Because they're free, you don't get a seat, and so we were kind of crammed with the other kids and myself in seats, and it was overnight, like I said, so it was hard to try to lay down and go to sleep. And I had the baby trying to sleep on the floor, and he would kind of like slide up under a seat in front of us or slide under us, so we didn't get a lot of sleep. But I did it, and I was proud of myself for being young and taking 5 little kids on the train from, I think the baby was about 9 months and the oldest was 7. But after that I realized, hey, I can go anywhere. And when I had 7 kids, I drove them from North Carolina over to California to visit my family. That was when Nathan did have a good job, so we had the money for it, which was really fun. We got to see a lot of sites. I did it on a pretty good budget, but we were able to afford a nice trip like that and stop and see lots of national parks, stayed with friends or family most of the time, old roommates, things like that, and then we drove back across the United States. So I was gone for a total of 2 months, by driving a couple weeks and then staying a few weeks in California and seeing all my family and siblings, nieces and nephews, and then we drove back home 2 weeks. So we did the south route to California, and then we went back north through like Yellowstone and South Dakota, Mount Rushmore, the St. Louis Arch, and things on the way back. But it was really fun, you know, and I had the 7 kids. The youngest was 3 months when we left. She was 5 months old when we got back, and the oldest was 11, and they were just great travelers. So the rest is history about vacations by myself with kids, and you just realize you're stronger than you think you are. I mean, I had to do all the driving, and now I'm kind of a wimp with driving. I always have my teenager to drive for even little trips. And a nursing baby, and we had a set schedule. I could do a whole video on how I did that car trip. But I probably wouldn't have done it if I hadn't done that train ride, if I hadn't done other car trips, been taking the kids on field trips by myself, you know, just day trips, and the couple of the airplane rides that I had done previously. So I realized I can do hard things, I can manage. Heavenly Father always helps us work it out. He sends people to help us when we need it, nice people sitting by us on the plane to help out, and things like that. A lot of my friends, when their husbands first started doing the hospital rotations, so they would stop going to church if their husband wasn't there to help them go to church. And I just kind of like had to step up and say, hey, yeah, I don't have a husband to help me get the babies and toddlers ready to go to church, but we're still gonna go. And I felt like I was still blessed for doing that. And same with, like I said, the vacations or state parks, trick-or-treating. We'd have to do that without him, and other things like that. And it does make you stronger. And I hope that, you know, you're in a loving husband-wife relationship, and that you do miss and you want to do those things with your husband. But if you can't, then realize that you're stronger than you think you are. I'm not saying any of these things to boast, but to say that it's been a blessing because it made me stronger. Because I'm sure that if I was in a really loving relationship, that I wouldn't have done those things either. And if I'd relied on my husband super much, then I wouldn't do those things either. I'd be like, there's no way I can take all these kids to a state park and keep track of them, or a long car trip or a flight. I would always want his help. So I think that was one blessing, that I'm glad that I preferred to do things alone, because it made me stronger, and I did harder things than I would have done if I were relying on him and if he was a super helpful dad and husband. And the second takeaway is that if I had had a really great relationship with my husband, then I know I wouldn't have bonded as well with my children. I'm pretty sure if you're going on dates all the time, and if he was there for me emotionally and someone to talk to, and I just really enjoyed his company, I don't think I would have latched onto my children as much as I did. So I'm not glad that I had a husband like that. I'm just looking at the bright side, that since I did, what good could have come of this, that we didn't have a great marriage. And it was because, the good thing about it is that I'm very, very close to my children now. When he wasn't treating us right and he'd leave the house, then I had nothing else to do but put my energy into the children. And if they were all crying and upset, then I was like, we got to make the best of the situation and not feel sorry for ourselves, or to sit here and cry about it. So we would say, hey, let's build a fort with a bunch of blankets, and then let's read in it. Let's light some candles and have a little party. Let's make cookies. Let's sing around the piano and bring some good feelings. Let's have a board game night, do a puzzle together. Whatever I could do. We did tricks on the trampoline and have kind of like a flips or a talent show night, things like that. And it made me spend a lot more time with my children and rely on them and bond and say, hey, we're making it through a rough night tonight, or rough time. And same thing like with the hurricanes or the tornado that came through, that we worked together to get through it. We would have Olympic parties. You know, I always kind of wish my husband would just sit here and watch Olympics with me or something. But he was pretty busy with hospital work and doctor work, or just not home. And I said, I'll do it with my children. So we would have Olympic parties and stay up and watch the Olympics together. I also learned to take care of myself and not rely on my husband to take care of me, to fulfill my emotional needs or physical needs or things like that. So after having babies, I just had to try to take care of myself and figure out how we could get into a good schedule and rhythm so that I could heal and take care of the children. He didn't do much for my birthday and seemed to kind of have some meltdowns those days. So I figured out how to make my birthday special for myself, and I usually just took the kids to the mountains. That's where I became to love the mountains. I would just take them away for a night or two, go camping or stay in a motel, and go hiking during the day, see some fun sights, some historical places like that. And that way I could still have a good birthday and not rely on him to make it special for me. I'm not trying to say anything bad about him, just saying how to make sure you're taking care of yourself and not always relying on someone else to make you happy. And one last thing I can think of is during emergencies, then I realized I was a lot stronger than I thought I was. When my first child had fallen and needed stitches, then my husband was in probably a residency day, and this is before cell phones, so I could try to page him on his pager, but I knew he wasn't going to answer, so I paged him, he didn't answer. And so I just was like, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and figure out what to do. And I found a friend to watch the other kids and took her to the doctor and got her stitched up. And after that, it gave me a lot of confidence that I can handle emergencies like that. And for all the rest of our emergencies, he hasn't been there. I've just been able to figure out what to do and handle it. And it gave me a lot more confidence. When I first got married, I thought I was pretty cool and strong, but I wasn't. So I realized I was trying to rely on him a whole bunch for things like that, for car breakdowns, stitches, heaters and air conditioners not working, major decisions, vacations, big purchases and things like that. And I realized that I had to do all of it, but I can do it. God helped me do it, and he'll help you do it. You're stronger than you think you are. Things aren't as scary as you think. There's always a way to figure things out. So these are some of the blessings from being poor, not having a super supportive husband, or a very busy husband, or a military husband who might be gone a lot. It's kind of lonely. You think you're the only one at like a church dinner with the kids. Everyone else has spouses, or at a museum. You see all these families going together, but it can be done, and it can be done very graciously and happily, and you and your children will have a great time with it. One huge blessing I've received from not having a lot of income is knowing how much other people care for you and care for me. I'm overwhelmed with how many people over the years have given to my family. I remember our very first Christmas that we were really struggling, then we were door ditched a bunch of really cool gifts and things. We got caroled to. Somebody left a Christmas tree in our house anonymously just because we couldn't afford a Christmas tree. We had drawn a paper Christmas tree and pasted it on the wall. And I hadn't realized that people would step up and do things like that. And obviously, I feel like God has told them, hey, this family needs help. And I'm sure they are praying to say, hey, which family can we help this Christmas or this year? Or which family can we give these extra clothes to, and things like that. And I know that they felt that our family would be a great recipient of them. So because they're always an answer to my prayers when we were feeling down or lonely, especially when Nathan was working over the holidays and things like that, then people would show up and carol to us or bring us cookies or sit and talk. And that's when I realized how much it's great to be in need, because you will feel God's love through others more than any other time in your life. I feel like when you have or tragedies or things like that, people will show up and spread God's love that way. On the flip side, I think the only con, I guess there's the two cons of not having a lot of money, and one is of course not being able to afford things that you want when you do want to just go on a little trip or to a zoo or museum, and you can't afford it. The daily constant pressure of and burden of not having enough and wondering if you're going to have enough to pay your bills. That's a pretty big heartache, a pretty big burden. Wanting to get things for your children or for your home, to fix things that are breaking, things like that. It's pretty hard. But the other con is that sometimes people think that you're just so poor that you'll take anything. And I think this is kind of hard, that say you want a coat and they ask, what can I get for you? What do you guys need? And you're like, oh, my child needs a coat. And so they just give you one. They're like, the zipper's broken, it's got a hole. And it doesn't really make you feel that good. It feels like that's all we deserve is a broken coat that can't even zip up and keep you super warm. And children can kind of sense that this is all I'm worth. So it's a little bit hard And I see that in other like food drives and stuff like that. People have food drives and then they just ask for donations, and I want to help them too, but it's like all Pop-Tarts and Top Ramen and kind of junk food. And you're like, people are better than that, than just eating junk food. They're not so desperately poor and hungry that they want junk food. So I try to really just give them better than that. It's the best that I can give, a really wholesome meal. Especially if I bring someone a dinner, I try to bring it the most nutritious meal that I can. And try to give them new toys with batteries in it. I mean, like if I'm handing down toys, I don't give them a broken one. I would give them a toy that already had the batteries in it that was really good, or a classic toy that can be used for good creativity, things like that. Overall, I'm so grateful for my life and where it's led me. I'm grateful for the trials that I've had, that they made me stronger. I'm so grateful that we've had to struggle a little bit financially, especially when we first had kids, so that we didn't start off too materialistic with them, that they learned to play creatively, to do without, to only have a few outfits and shoes, because it's simpler and easier to have them put away their toys and their shoes and clothes and stuff without drawers that are overflowing and stuffed, and closets that are, you open and everything falls out. It's nice just to have very little things to take care of. I feel like that keeping life simple that way is easier for children and for parents. So I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful for all the people that have served me all throughout the years. I'm grateful that it's all needed in our communities, the rich and the not so rich, to help each other and to bless each other's lives. So I'm overall grateful for how my life has turned out. Of course, I wish I'd had a really supportive, knowledgeable husband that I could just rely on for everything. But in the end, I know that it's made me stronger to have learned these things by myself and to do them. Otherwise, I'd be just living pretty easy life as a rich doctor's wife. I hope this video helps you somehow. I hope you're able to either go looking for those who need help around you and provide that support and be an answer to someone else's prayer, or that you will know how to be stronger than you think you are, and finding a solution to some of the problems that you have, things breaking or whatever, being able to know how to stretch your money. I'm hoping that you know how to see the good in your life situation, whatever it is. I hope this encourages you somehow. Thanks so much for watching and supporting my channel. Keep letting me know what else you would like to see and hear from. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.